Thanks everybody for joining my Azure Microsoft 365 user group for this month. Actually, this is my first of two this month. Actually, kind of had we've got so many people that have asked to present. I've kind of expanded it to 2 a month just to keep up with the presenters. So today we got a couple great presenters from Belgium. And I'll give proper introductions here in a moment. Just a couple quick things. For those of you that have not been to the group meeting, we generally meet a lot of times the third Wednesday of the month. But I've actually put the first Wednesday in there too, for the next couple months, maybe even the next 3 months. We'll be doing the first and third Wednesday of the month, but what we try to do as a mission here is create a inclusive Azure and Microsoft 365 learning community here. I bring in as I've noted, global members of the community to do presentations on their areas of expertise. This group, being that we're all virtual now. I'm based in Michigan. I know that some of the people attending today are based in Michigan, US, but it's welcome to anybody US and around the world, and made some changes to the timing of it to kind of help generate more of that expanded attendance as well. Everybody's welcome, so share the dates. We have a website that I'll share in a moment. Share the sessions with all the sessions are recorded and on my YouTube channel, as well as everybody's welcome to attend the live broadcasts as well. These are built for no sales pitches, so this is technical information or business information, security information, things of that nature. And all of our none of our sessions are sales pitches from any type of seller. We bring in technical leaders within the community for these sessions. And so here's the website, maz365usergroup.github.io, where you can get to the sessions, get to the meetup group. Join the meetup group as well, so that you get notifications. Later this month, I've got Peter DeTender, which I know Wim and Karel know as well, doing a talk on containers. I've got in January, and Shabazz Dar doing a WVD talk on Windows Virtual Desktop, which I'm really looking forward to, and Menaka is going to talk on Azure Functions also in January. So that's what I've got scheduled now, and those are all up on the user group site as well. Upcoming events, Wim and Karel have their own user group in Belgium, the MC2MC group. When's your guys?
The 17th, but Karel is from another user group. He's from the Tech9 user group.
Karel's another group as well. I'm sorry, I'll have to put that in here. What is
no worries.
If you want to pop your user group in the chat as well, that would be awesome. Yeah. And I'll make sure it's in the slide deck also for everybody. But yeah, so multiple user groups. We all act as a community here where we're all support each other's user groups. I've spoken at Wim's, and Karel, I'd be happy to speak at yours as well. And a couple other things. I've got a couple on my YouTube channel, a couple YouTube series that I've been running also around Azure security and Azure networking that have a group of videos that I've done, just little quick 10 to 15 minute videos. For those of you that I think most of you know me from my previous job, but welcome. But I'm currently a cloud training architect lead at Opsagility and Skill Me Up. I'm an Azure MVP and Microsoft certified trainer. And again, I have various social media presence. Let's get to our guests and everything for today. So rather than reading my slide, Wim, why don't you give a quick introduction?
So I'm Matthyssen. I live in Belgium. I work as a cloud architect. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, just like Dwayne and Karel. So I deliver also all kind of trainings related mostly to Azure. Since July, I'm also nominated as an MVP, which is a great honor and still is. I think I'm in the same category as Dwayne is. Next to that, I'm also a part of a Belgium user group, MC2MC, Microsoft Cloud and Client Management community, where we not only focus on the Azure, but also on Microsoft 365. And I'm also on Twitter. So if you ever want to reach out, you can always contact me through my Twitter handle, @Matthyssen. So that's it in a small nutshell.
Yes. And Karel, how about you?
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and thanks, Dwayne, for having us. And we finally meet now, so that's very nice. Yeah. So my name is indeed Karel de Winter. I'm also a certified trainer, Microsoft certified trainer, and I'm a member of the Tech9 user group. So it's the IT Pro Tech9 user group. So we have a couple of user groups in Belgium. We've even made a global site, a global Belgian community site to schedule all the different sessions. So we make sure that the dates are not overlapping. So, okay, I'm for my job, I'm a cloud architect working at, and yeah, I enjoy family time, like you say here, and I also like running into the wild. And if you want to reach me, you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn, or just visit my blog if you want.
I grabbed this morning from your session, Eyes, by the way, Karel.
So we can skip them in our session.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. So today, as the meetup said, Wim and Karel are going to talk about these 7 habits every Azure admin must have, and you're in for a treat, because if you haven't been in one of the sessions that Wim is involved in, it usually has a very fun movie theme. So I can tell here we're looking at the
movie themes this time.
Themes. Oh wow! So we got multiple. So I will stop sharing and allow you guys to share your screen. And
let me take control. Give me a moment. I think you're now seeing my Azure portal.
Yep. And if anybody has any questions or anything, I'll keep a monitor on the chat if you want to leave a question in the chat, and we can, if it's specific to what Wim or Karel are talking about that specific time, we'll get a pause going to answer that question, and feel free to do that. Or you also have the ability to raise your hand as well if you'd like to speak.
Yep. Okay. So hello everyone again. And welcome to our session titled 7 Habits Every Azure Admin Must Have. Karel and myself already delivered this session before, but this is an updated version from December 20. Like we already said in the beginning, we can put in almost 30 habits, I think, but yeah, we will stick to 7 today. So people who maybe already saw this session, still hang on, because there are some changes and some new topics added. First of all, before going through the agenda, we want to thank Dwayne and Elizabeth and the other members of the Michigan Azure and Microsoft 365 user group for the opportunity to deliver this talk. So on the agenda today, first we will briefly talk about the responsibilities that the new Azure or Cloud Administrator role entails. It's a new IT role you now see a lot within companies. Then we will talk about the 7 habits every one of those Azure admins, in our opinion, should have. And between those habits, we also have some demos, of course. And at the end of the session, we also go through the key takeaways to really focus on the things you should really remember about our session. And completely at the end, like Dwayne already said, I think we probably will still have some time for a Q&A, and where we would love to answer all your questions. So let's get started with a short introduction, but probably we'll skip that one. So I'm Matthyssen, and this is Karel de Winter, and everything is on the deck. So if it's if you want to reach out or contact us, you can do so via Twitter or LinkedIn, or through our blogs. So probably some of you took their first steps in IT working as a support or a system engineer or as a system administrator for a company who owns their own on-premises data center and infrastructure. And as an on-premises SysAdmin, you were responsible for almost everything in the data center. You not only needed to keep all servers up to date and to do all the new server and application installations, but you probably also needed to do all the cabling and racking of the servers and troubleshoot almost every IT problem. Hopefully not like Tom Cruise in this picture, but yeah, probably we did all of those things then. So, but in this modern hybrid cloud world where cloud is becoming important for almost every business these days, the SysAdmin role is going to transform in something else. It will kind of evolve into a cloud admin role, or in case of Azure, an Azure admin role. So, and for a lot of people, this mostly sounds like they're going to lose their job or their role is going to be less important. But in fact, it's more the case of how more things change, the more they stay the same. In their changed role, they still will have responsibility for not only building, but also for managing, protecting, automating, and optimizing this new hybrid cloud environment. And this just like they did before when they only worked on premises, because the cloud doesn't run itself. Depending on which cloud service model you run your workloads, is it IaaS, is it PaaS, even serverless or SaaS, there will always be a shared responsibility where Microsoft will manage everything till a certain point, but you as an Azure admin also have some responsibility. This can be managing your IaaS VMs by foreseeing them from Windows updates, antivirus or backup, or only managing the databases and the data, for example, when you run Azure SQL databases. So let us now go ahead with some habits those new Azure admins, in our opinion, must have. And I think Karel will start with telling you everything about the first one.
Yeah, that's correct. So if you want to manage and protect your Azure environment, so what tools do you need? And what if you don't have a PC or a management station to log on to the portal? So, well, let me show you how you can remain in control. So if you are working with Azure, you should know that you have some kind of toolkit to manage Azure. So first of all, let me say, when you don't have access to the portal or you don't have any management device at hand, what can you do? So first of all, you can install the app on your mobile phone, so the Azure mobile app, and that should save you some money when you, for example, wake up in the middle of the night and realize, damn, I have some VMs running and I didn't shut them down, or my automation script isn't running. So then you can just pick your mobile phone, run the mobile app, and then go to do the settings and then just shut down or deallocate the VM. So other tools we know, of course, is the Azure Portal, but there is also a Portal app. So the Portal app is not in a browser, but you can install it on a virtual machine if you want, or Server 2019. And then you have a separate portal to manage Azure Active Directory. So it's the Azure AD Admin Center, and it's a different URL also. And you have if you want to test out new preview features, you can use the preview portal, but be aware of that you don't use preview features in production, because you don't get support from Microsoft. And then if you are in trouble, you are on your own. So be very careful with that. And like I said, the mobile app to know, because it saved me some money. So like you can see, Rambo has also some tools. If he was an Azure admin, then he would use, for example, the Azure Cloud Shell to run the PowerShell commands or Docker commands or whatever, Azure CLI commands in a shell within a browser, so you can interact with your Azure environment. Tools also like the Azure Storage Explorer is very important to know, to transfer some files or the AZ copy command. Those are tools that we use very often if you want to migrate some stuff to Azure. The Windows Admin Center is also very important. You can now use it also in preview in the Azure portal, but the Windows Admin Center is used to manage your on-prem hybrid scenario and your things like Azure Backup in the cloud. And one of my favorite tools is Visual Studio Code. I use it a lot to write my ARM templates or do some PowerShell. I think every Azure admin must install Visual Studio Code and try and use it. And there is also the Windows terminal that you can use, and therein you can use the command, you can use PowerShell, but also Azure CLI. So those are the very important tools. But what if you want to use those tools across multiple subscriptions? Well, for that, Azure Lighthouse brings you the capability of managing multiple subscriptions across multiple tenants. So it's actually based on delegating access to other users. And Azure Lighthouse helps you to manage other environments, whether you are or a large enterprise that manages multiple customer environments or multiple companies. You can use that. So Dwayne said that there are some CSP partners or people that work for a CSP partner. Well, they should know that there is Azure Lighthouse to manage all them customers from one glass of pane. So in the back, Azure Lighthouse uses two technologies. So first of all, the Azure Resource Manager and also Azure Active Directory. And the key technology behind Lighthouse is the delegated resource management. So you have users or groups that are originating from your own tenant that have access to the target subscription or even below the target resource group, which are in a different tenant. So it's very good to know that you can manage other customers from within Azure Lighthouse. So from within a management tenant or your own tenant. And what do you get from Azure Lighthouse is that it will provide you with the cross-tenant management without having to configure your users as a guest user in another tenant or on the subscription or on the resource groups or whatever. So it can come in very handy if you have or you have to manage and get access to a lot of customer subscriptions. But for now, just let me show you a demo of the Cloud Shell. So let me quickly share my screen. Azure Cloud Shell. I'm just going to share my and going to share my screen too. That would be better, I think. You can see my screen, I presume. So here we have the Cloud Shell, and I run the Cloud Shell in a different tab. So in a browser, you can also go via the Azure portal to this icon that will run the Cloud Shell also, but be aware that shell.azure.com just brings you to the Cloud Shell. That will a shell for you. And as you can see, I can show you that PowerShell is used, so it's PowerShell core, and you can see that the platform in the background is a Linux environment, but you also have the PowerShell AZ modules are by default enabled or installed. Yeah, you can run Docker commands if you want. So Docker is enabled, Docker is installed. So if you have a Docker environment, you can, from within the Cloud Shell, manage your Docker environment. And good to know is that you have a cloud drive available, and there you can store some files, and from within the shell, you can start up code and open a file if you want. From here, you have a context menu. You can type in or you can edit some JSON file and then you can save it. So let me close that for now. And as you can see, here are little icons that you can upload or download files to the directory. If you want to know, the cloud drive is. Let me just clear the screen that you can see the command. The cloud drive is a file share that is mounted on a storage account. So if you go to the portal and look for the specific resource group and storage account, you can see that that there has been made some file share to store the files of your cloud shell. So that is the demo for now. Up to Wim.
Yep. So let me first take control again. So I think my screen is showing.
Yep.
And so let us go to the second habit. For our second habit, we want to talk about remaining future-proof by trying to think beyond IaaS, because where we're going, we don't need VMs. So when moving on-premises resource to Azure, the first thing you need to think about in the assessment phase is choosing the right cloud migration approach to really make your cloud journey a success. You not only need to check if your business is ready to move to the cloud, to Azure, but you also need to validate if your IT people, the people who will manage the environment when it's completely migrated, have the right skills to support such an Azure environment. Next to that, like shown on the screen, the 5 R's can help you to see how an on-premises workload or application can be migrated to Azure. First of all, you have rehost, or like most people know it, lift and shift, where you pick up an on-premises VM or server physical and just place it in Azure. You can also refactor or re-architect, where you're going to rethink your workload before moving it to Azure. To move it, for example, high available and scalable. You have a single VM and you want to make it high available in your cloud environment. You can also revise, or like they say, re-platform your workload, where you're going to migrate your on-premise workload, but not to an IaaS solution, but to a PaaS service. And then you also you can completely rebuild or rewrite your application, or you can even replace it with a complete SaaS application. So you give everything at hand and you buy a specific application that replaces that on-prem workload. So mostly what we see a lot is that depending on who initiates the move, is it IT or is it business, mostly different types of one of the 5 R's is used. When IT mostly indicates it, it's a mostly timeline-driven migration. You see a lot of lift and shift as a first step. When the trigger mostly comes from the business itself, you see more choosing for refactoring, re-architecting, or rebuild migration scenarios. So there are some resources that can help you choosing the right cloud migration approach. First of all, you have the Microsoft Cloud Adaptation Framework, or CAF. That's a collection of documentation that provides you with implementation best practices and tools. If you're architecting your workloads, the Azure Architect Center is also a good resource. Here you can find all kinds of implementation examples, which can guide you in making a good design decision. If it's a low level or a high level, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of information you can find over there. Of course, you can also use Azure Migrate. It's an Azure service which can help you in discovering, assessing, and migrating your on-premise workloads or customer workloads. It's also a service Karel and myself use a lot during any Azure migration these days. You also have some other third-party vendors that offering these kind of solutions, but most of the time we use Azure Migrate. And if you're not sure how to get started with your cloud migration, you can always check out the Azure Migration Program. Here you can find help, or you can ask for guidance, or you can even contact a migration partner. A thing we also want to mention is there's also a Microsoft Learn course these days available, which you can follow. It will help you to get familiar with Azure landing architecture at mostly enterprise scale, and the critical design areas to build and manage your Azure environment. So also check that one out. Move it to advice. So when making your design, you also need to start thinking beyond IaaS VMs and try to use a more cloud optimized strategy. You can look into container instances, you can look into AKS, app service, service fabric, and Azure functions. just as a replacement for your normal Azure Compute options. And instead of just deploying or lift and shift VMs, you should choose one of those. And the flow chart shown on the screen, which also can be found in the Azure Architect Center, can really help you to make the right decision and choose the right candidate for your compute service. And then when your first approach was lift and shift, because we see it in a lot of companies, they just want to have a look and feel with Azure, and they just start moving their on-premise VMware VMs or Hyper-V VMs to Azure and see how that works. But when they're up there, they should always try not to make the VMs the end state. For example, you can switch from an IaaS file server to Azure Files, or from an IaaS domain controller to Azure Domain Services. And maybe to replace your IaaS DNS server, you can look into Azure DNS or Azure DNS private zones. And these days, even for people still working with print servers on-prem, you can now use, for example, Universal Print to replace them. It's currently still in public preview, but we already tested at some customers, and it really works good. So I think, Karel, it's up to you again.
Yeah. So I'm going to request control. Yeah. So in the next topic, we are going to make sure that we remain in control of our Azure environment. So based on a few questions we receive from customers, we can demonstrate why governance and management is needed. So questions like, how are we going to make sure that we know who created what resources and when? How do we make the data and services secure according to certain standards that a company must follow? And how do we know which department is responsible for certain services in Azure? So you see there are several questions and several things that we need to take into account when creating, managing, but also securing an Azure environment. And when a proper Azure governance model is followed, you can make sure that your teams are operating in a secure and compliant environment. So one of the biggest challenges in a cloud environment is cost management. So we need to make sure that we are suddenly not facing a high bill because someone created certain costly Kubernetes clusters in Azure. So it's we have to make sure that we know what the rest of the team is doing, and we also need to be aware that there are a lot of opportunities to store data in Azure. So the data can be stored in regions that are distributed worldwide, and maybe your company does not allow that. So you have to be aware that that you must know where the data is going to be stored. So what does Azure Governance actually consist of? Well, we can use Azure Blueprints to organize and structure the complete environment. You can also use tags and tagging, or I should say you must use tags and tagging. With tagging, we add metadata to resources, which will give a logical format to the resources itself. We always use tags like owner, department, and environment. Then it's very logical to find which resources does what things. We can also use airbag, which means role-based access control. So then we can control what and by whom and where something can happen in Azure. And obviously cost management gives us an insight into the consumption of the entire cloud. And we have to use Azure Policy to make sure that we can keep control of the properties and the resources. And last but not least is Azure Resource Graph. So Azure Resource Graph is very important. And with that, you can explore, you can query, and you can do an assessment of your Azure environment, and you can do it very fast. So Azure Resource Graph is something new and something very fast, something you should know about and you should use. And we can also measure the impact with the Resource Graph of the appliement of the Azure policies. And we have some queries provided, some examples. So, but we are going to share the deck afterwards. So feel free to try them out. But yeah, in fact, let me just show you how the resource graph is working. So I'm going to share my screen again. You can see here, if you just search in the top search bar to resource graph, you can come into this menu. I've already opened 3 different queries. So the first one is a query to find my VMs by location. So you can run that. It's very fast and you can see the count. And there is also something new, and that's the formatted results. If some names are not readable, it's going to be formatted in a different result and a better reading. We have also a query to query all the resources by name. So if you want to know what are all the resources and what are their names, so you can also here format, so you can see the type is being formatted. And something I use a lot is a very simple query just to show you all the types of resources you have. So a list of the unique resources. That's why the distinct is here. So that's very important. If you do a migration, you have to be sure that the types of resources are allowed to migrate or allowed to move from one CSP partner to another. And here with that little query, you can just see all the resources types you have, and you can export that to a CSV file also if you want. Okay, back to you, Wim.
Yeah, so let me first take control again. So there's my screen again. Put the video up, start. So up to our 4th habit. So our next one is about Azure cloud spend and how to remain informed and in control of your cloud costs. Choosing the right subscription type is also it's an important step in the design process because they have every subscription has a different rate and offer or a different benefits. The ones mostly seen in companies are enterprises or Microsoft customer agreements these days, or CSP subscriptions for all CSP partners in our session. When you're using one of those, the prices of your Azure resources will be lower than when you're just using a pay-as-you-go subscription. But people also need to be aware of their other software licenses, like those, for example, for SQLs. Further, know that when you, for example, have an AI agreement or an MCA agreement, you can set up an enterprise test subscriptions where you rates for services like not only VMs, but also for your SQL databases. And you should also know that some of the services are always free for use, and some have specific limitations, but you can use them for free. And for testing purposes, you should definitely look at Dev Test Labs and Azure Marketplace Test Drive. Azure Dev Test Labs do not have you can spin up VMs, and they do not have additional costs to use the service. You simply use for the VMs that's being used. And for people who don't know, test drives are ready-to-go environments that allow you to experience a product for free, and this without needing any Azure subscription. We already spinned some of those things up, and mostly for firewalls, so you can test out FortiGate, Palo Alto, and all others in the marketplace at the moment. So also look at those. Another good way to lower your EASM cost then is by using reserved instances, RIs, where you make a reservation of resources and capacity for either 1 or 3 years. Best practice is do it for 1 year. You can also combine this with the hybrid use benefit. The hybrid use benefit is also an option you have in which you will use your existing Windows or SQL licenses. You should have software assurance, and this for your Azure VMs or SQL servers running in Azure. And a combination of both can save you up to 82% of the price. Important to know is that you can these days not only use reservations for VMs, but also for SQL, premium managed SSD disks, even for Azure Blob Storage and Azure Cosmos DB. So also check all those other Azure reservations. Yeah, and then there are also some other ways to keep your costs down in Azure. First of all, always, yeah, that's an advice we give. Always estimate your costs in advance before making any design or before deploying any resource into Azure, so that you have a specific idea of the price at the end of the month. For this, you can use the Azure pricing calculator and the total cost of ownership, or shortly said, the TCO calculator. The TCO calculator is a tool to estimate cost savings, which you can realize by migrating your on-premises workloads to Azure. When you're working on your high-level or low-level design, you should also keep an eye on any design decisions which can impact costs. For example, a resource can cost less when you deploy it to a different region, for example, or when you're designing storage accounts and you're choosing GRS, or you're deploying a recovery service fault and you choose GRS. You can also choose LRS, which is less expensive than choosing GRS. You can also delete all unused Azure resources that we see a lot of customers. They deploy something, they delete the VM, but yeah, the disk keeps there and they still pay for the disk at the end of the month. Maybe they use the public IP address. They also delete it and the IP address stays there. And yeah, it thinks in euros, it costs around 90 euros each month. So yeah, it's amount of money you can spare if you just clean it up like it should. And then for VMs, which you don't need to run 24/7, you should start to try and stop them during no working hours. These days you can use auto shutdown, and this directly from the VM blade, or you can start stop solution, which is offered through Azure Automation. So, and of course, Azure also has a built-in and free tool named Azure Cost Management, and which can help you not only to monitor, but also to manage your costs, and this for all your clouds, even for AWS. You can use it to do cost analysis and define cost alerts to inform you when, for example, your consumption reaches a specific threshold. You set in a specific budget at 200 euros for a specific resource group or whatever. And whenever a specific percentage of that amount is reached, you get an email or you get notified through other ways, whatever you set into there. Next to Azure Cost Management, there is also Azure Policy, which gives you the ability to control your cost. To set up specific policies, you can set up specific policies to implement a form of cost controls and to guardrail your environment. For example, you can set a policy which only allows the deployment of certain VMs in your environment, or for example, restricts the creation of public IPs. You can also enforce that specific resource tag, like a cost center tag, for example, is always required when a new resource is deployed, or that a resource can only be deployed in certain regions. But let me demo this. So I'm in my Azure portal, and you can go to Azure Policy to the sidebar, or you can just type it in the global search bar. So let me do it from this way, maybe. Just click on Policy. Let us wait until it's loaded. You can see I already implemented some policies. I have different management groups in my environment. One, for example, with the extension at the end, BE, is for Belgium, and the one with the US is for US. So I can implement different policies to those specific management groups where specific Azure subscriptions are underneath. So for example, for the Belgian one, if I open it, that specific management group, I have specific locations located, specified to West Europe. And we can see I have some resource deployed that's not complied. It was deployed before the policy was in place. So that's why it gives a non-compliant state. But if we look at the out locations for the other one, for the US, if we edit the assignment, if we look at the parameters, I have 15 options selected. So I've marked every US region, And if I now want to deploy in that specific region and I want to deploy a resource in West Europe, it shouldn't work. I can only deploy in those specific regions. Let me close that one. It's not a good way to close it like this, but you can also specify which VM SKUs can be deployed. If you only want these series, you also have that built-in policy available. If you look at cost management, you can open it also from the sidebar. It's the cost management and billing. If you click on cost management, these days you have a lot of options. You can do cost analysis. You can go into detail in all your costs, which price has every resource. You can set in cost alerts and budgets, the thing I was talking about. So for example, for a specific resource group, I set a specific budget for 200 euros. When it reaches, the resources, when it reaches 180 euros, I will be notified by email. And a nice extra option available is advisor recommendations. So Azure Cost Management in the back is also integrated with Azure Advisor and through Azure Monitor. So for example, I have a recommendation, right size, shut down unauthorized virtual machines. You just can click on it and you can quickly, you can dismiss it or postpone it, or you can just quickly resize that specific VM to the standard B series VM, for example, to save some money. So I think that was my demo. So Karel, back to you for the fifth one.
Okay, thank you. You should say that if you enable the reserved instances and you want to cancel them, there can some cancellation fee.
These days it's free, but normally it's a 12% fee for every specific reservation you made. So it can cost a lot of money if you terminate a specific reservation. If you have a reservation for 1 year and you all determine it after 2 months, you probably from 2021 you shall pay a fee just to cover Microsoft expenses, I think.
Yeah.
So keep that one in mind. It's an important one.
Yeah. So when do you know when things are going wrong in Azure? And believe me, those things can happen. So Azure Service Health. That's a personalized view of the health of your Azure services and the services that matter to us. So it's a free service that can notify you if issues that are impacting your environment occur, and also they can say what the health is of the resources that you use. So the service will also inform you how Microsoft is fixing the issue. And it will keep you updated when those issues are resolved. So you have 3 different service health events. You have the service. Let me go back. Yeah, you have the service issues, and you also have the planned maintenance, and you also have the health advisories. And the health advisories inform you when certain features are deprecated or are for example, exceeding the usage quota. So good to know is that Service Health integrates also with Azure Monitor, and it will email you or alert you when via some webhooks when some notifications when things are happening. And Azure Advisor, that's also a free service. And it will provide you with personalized recommendations and also best practices of your complete Azure subscriptions and resources. So Wim showed you a lot via cost management. You can see which resources are going to, or maybe you can enable reserved instances, for example. But those recommendations can also be customized so that only the recommendations are shown from the subscriptions or resource groups that are most important to you and not your complete Azure environment. And it can show recommendations from different types of resources, such as virtual machines, application gateways, app services, SQL Service, for example. And it delivers those recommendations by analyzing the underlying data. And the data is via Azure Monitor, and it provides its recommendations based on that data. You now can use also advisor alerts to get notified when an advisor alert is triggered. And there is also the Azure Advisor score, and that's calculated from a scale from 0 to 100% in each of those advisor categories. And a score of 100% means that all your resources tracked by advisor follow the best practice. And a score of 0 means that none of your resources follow the recommended best practices. So it's best to score as high as possible. So Azure Advisor is your personalized cloud consultant, and it's also free. And later on, I will show you some Azure Service Health. But our next free service and tip is the Security Center. So Security Center must be your first thing to do when you need a security overview of your complete Azure environment. And it will also give you recommendations on how a specific resource can improve security configurations. So a lot has changed since Ignite this year. As you all know, Security Center is offered in a free and a standard edition, so free and a paid edition. But the Azure Security Center Standard Edition is now called Azure Defender for servers. But Security Center is still offered in 2 modes, but with other names. So you have the Security Center Free, which is a free edition, and you have Azure Defender, which is the paid edition. And Security Center without Azure Defender is enabled for free and is enabled on all your subscriptions when you visit the Security Center dashboard for the first time. And enabling Azure Defender extends the capabilities of the free mode. So you have all the things in the free mode, but it also protects your workloads against threats and also provides built-in protection for your hybrid workloads. So that's very good to know. So in addition, a new addition is workflow automation, and that allows you to automatically react and trigger workflows based on certain conditions, like an incident response or when security recommendations are generated. But let's just go back to Service Health and let me show you how it works. So you can see I've made a dashboard here and I've pinned something from Service Health, and maybe you can see, or maybe not, but let me just zoom in a little bit. I have 2 little green dots, so everything is okay. But if you go to Service Health, the main thing is that you can see is the service issues, and the issues are the things that are globally in the complete Azure environment, so over all the regions that you have selected via the drop-down list, so where your resources are active. Those are the issues that are known by Microsoft and are globally. If you want to see which issues have been arised, then we can go to the history, and maybe we are seeing last 3 months. Select all. Maybe we can see some. Normally there should be some issues. And then from there on, we can see the explanation of the issue and what has been resolved and how they resolved it. So you can see the detail of the issue and the resolution also. But those are just the issues for the complete Azure environment. But what if you want to know the resource health of your own resources? So for that, there is a resource health. And if we go and select the right subscription, and for example, go to, let's say, virtual machines, then you can see that I have 2 virtual machines in my subscription. One is saying that there is an issue. So if we click on that, we can say, we can look at the health history and see which event has occurred. So yeah, I have stopped my VM, and that's why the health issue is that the VM is unavailable, but you can see that it's a customer initiated, so it's being stopped or deallocated. So for that, I know that I have put the VM in shutdown mode myself. Also good to know is that you have health alerts. From here, you can make alerts and then trigger some, like you do in Azure Monitor, trigger some events or alerts or SMS or email that you can that you can get notified if some health issues or some resource health is being occurred. Okay, that's for resource health. Back to you, Wim.
Yeah. So we're up to our 6th habit now. Let me share again. Here we are. So habit 6, secure hybrid network connections to remain secure when connecting to your Azure environment. Like probably most of you know, the easiest way, but the least secure one, is to connect to an Azure VM by using a public IP address. It's PIP. In this way, you can connect to an EAS VM through RDP on port 338 or SSH on port 22, depending if the VM is a Linux VM or a Windows VM. This kind of way of connection to your Azure VMs is good for studying purposes or when you need to do a quick test, but you should never use it to connect to your VMs in any production environment. Because by this way, choosing this way to connect to your VMs, one or both of the management ports will be widely open on the internet. And this way, your VM can easily be attacked with brute force attacks, even port scans and zero-day exploits, for example. So in production environments, you need to connect to your Azure resources to a hybrid connection with high security, like a point-to-site VPN, or even better, a site-to-site VPN, or the biggest one, the express route. A resource we still see a lot also being used in production environments is a jump box or a jump host or jump server, like some people like to name it. A jump box is a server. You can see it as a controlled entry point in your Azure environment, which is used to access your devices in a separated security zone or in one of the spokes VNets if you're working with a hub-spoke model. When you use a jump box, it's best to enable just-in-time VM access, or JIT, shortly said. So you can control access and reduce the attack surface to that specific jump box. JIT is available when you use the Azure Defender on tier of Azure Security Center. So how does it work? First of all, a user needs to request access to a VM. Then Security Center checks if that user has role-based access permissions for that specific VM. And if so, that request is approved. And then Security Center automatically configures the NSG to allow inbound traffic to, for example, one or both of the management ports like 2389 or 22. And this for the requested amount of time. And when the time set window is passed, Azure Security Center will automatically restore the energy back to its previous state. These days, you can also use Azure Bastion to securely connect to your Azure VMs. Azure Bastion is a PaaS service that you provision inside your virtual network, and it provides secure and seamless RDP SSH connectivity to your virtual machines, and this directly from the Azure Portal, so over SSL. How does it work? Bastion lives in its own subnet. It's called the Azure Bastion subnet, and it's you create it in your VNet, and it exposes only ports 443 or SSL to the internet. Through your Bastion host, you connect with RDP 2389 or SSH 22, and this on the private IP address of your VMs. And in this way, your VMs itself does not need a public IP anymore to connect with it with RDP. But let me shortly demo this. So here's my portal. First of all, I have some virtual machines running, and for one of them, the first one, the Apple one, I've created a JIT policy in the back. So if I want to connect to it, for example, it's a Windows VM, so through RDP, you can see I first need to request access. So if I click on it, an action is triggered, and then it will allow me after some time. Now I can RDP in it. So I can, for example, download the RDP file, or when I have a point-to-site VPN, maybe I can now RDP to that VM. If you want to look at it, you can open the Security Center. These days, it's somewhere at the bottom. You open the Azure Defender. Everything is in another place these days. And if you go to the bottom, you can see just-in-time VM access. And if you click on it, we can see that that specific VM at the moment has 2 requests. It's on port 3389, and it's originated from myself. So Another one, if you want to use Bastion, these days, luckily, you only need to deploy one Bastion host when you're working with different VNets. Some time before, it's now in preview. You had to deploy Bastion host in every VNet where you want to have access to a VM, but it's in preview now, so you can deploy it, for example, only in your hub VNet. So if I go to another virtual machine, let us say the app02, it's also a Windows VM. I can also connect to it again. I just click on Bastion. It will open. I click on Use Bastion. It will type in. I type in my username. I hope I type in my password correct. I should choose a shorter password. So it will open an extra tab in my browser, and it will connect to my VM, and I can start using it just like you will do it in a normal RDP connection. You can also copy text from, for example, you have some passwords or some other stuff or commands in the notepad, you can copy into it. File copy doesn't work at the moment, but hopefully Microsoft is working on that for the future. And as an admin, you can even go to the Bastion. You can click on that specific Bastion host. You can, under settings, go to sessions. And you can see, still loading, it's not that fast, that someone is connected to the VM app. And even as an administrator, you can just drop that specific connection if you don't want that person to have access. So let us now go to my slide deck again for our last habit of the day. So the 7th one. So as our last habit, we want to look into how you can secure cloud identities and foresee a good cloud identity and management strategy. So first question is, why is securing your Azure identities that important these days? Well, because these days there are all kinds of Azure threats where attackers may use existing techniques like, for example, social engineering, where an attacker tries to manipulate someone to give up confidential information. Or these days you also have lots of ransomware. It's a kind of malware which encrypts a company's files or data, and then after which the attacker demands a ransom to the company, and this to restore access to the data. But there are also some new technique attackers or hackers use, like acquire Azure tenant keys from GitHub, or where an attacker tries to get into an Azure VM, like I said in habit 6, by using a brute force or the PSSH password spray attack or something. And for example, when you're running a web server in Azure IaaS and your server is breached, attackers can use it to install crypto mining malware and then use that for cryptocurrency mining, for example. So there are a lot of attacks these days. This slide shows some example of identity breaches. For example, you can see the top 20 most popular passwords used by employees, which everyone can simply look at by opening a browser and look for them through Bing or Google. A nice website also listed on the slide is haveibeenpwned.com, where you can check if you have an account that has been compromised in a data breach. You simply need to type in an email address you want to validate, and then the site in the back says if that specific account is breached. So I would advise everyone to try some of these accounts out and just put them in there, and maybe some of those accounts will be breached. So as an Azure administrator these days, you should try to follow a zero trust model, because in most companies these days, you not only have to support access to data and services from inside the corporate firewall, but mostly also from outside it. And by applying a zero trust model, a ZTM, you never assume trust, but instead you continually validate trust. You will rely on verifiable user and device trust claims, and will grant access to resources based on those. In this way, a trust is no longer assumed just based on the location inside of your organization's perimeter, but also from the outside. And this because most of your users now also access apps and data from the internet, like, for example, Azure workloads. there are some resources and tools that can help you with protecting your Azure identities. First of all, like I already mentioned, you have role-based access control, which can help you to control who can access, edit, modify, or delete Azure resources. And this based on a least privileged access model. You can also use Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, or PIM, which is a server that enables on-demand, just-in-time administrative access to any of your Microsoft Online services. PIM is available when you have an Azure AD Premium P2 license or an EMS E5 license, and also some other licenses. Another tool you can use is Azure AD Conditional Access. Conditional Access is an Azure Active Directory tool that you can use to manage and control access to all your corporate resources, if they're running on premises or in Azure. And to use conditional access, you need to have an Azure AD Premium P1 license or a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license, if I'm correct. And last but not least, you can enable MFA, which you can now enable for free. So would advise to enable it for not all your users, but almost every user. So for example, don't enable it for your emergency glass accounts or break glass accounts, for example. You can say that managing identity security for your Azure environment can be a big task. And luckily, you can now also simply enable Azure AD security defaults, which makes it easier to help protect you from identity-related attacks with pre-configured security settings, and this recommended by Microsoft. Like there are, for example, requiring all users to register for Azure multi-factor authentication, or blocking legacy authentication protocols. The only thing you should be aware of is if you're already using conditional access and have any conditional access policy enabled in your environment, security defaults won't be available to you. Let me quickly show you where you can enable it. If you go into Azure Active Directory, it's loading. You can go to Properties. And then if you go to the back, you can click on the Manage Security Defaults, and you can click them on or off. And if you have a conditional access policy already in place, you won't be able to do this. So it's an easy feature. You can enable it rather quickly just by moving a slider. So if you're not using it and you're not using any of your higher end identity protection tools, I would advise to already enable this one. So let me go back to the slide deck. And so before closing off, we just want to give you some key takeaways. 5 things you should really remember about our session of today, and not only the movie themes. But first of all, it's really time to modernize your workloads. And so when moving to Azure, try to think beyond IaaS where possible. Like Karel said, apply a good Azure Governance strategy so you can remain in control of your Azure environments. And also an important one, keep an eye on Azure Cloud Spend, because at the end of the month, someone has to pay the Azure bill. Also try to use all free built-in Azure servicing tools like Azure Advisor, Azure Service Health, Azure Cost Management, the Azure Security Center free tier, and this to better manage and protect your Azure environments. And last but not least, know that identity is a new security parameter and that you should really try to secure all your cloud identities. So this was our session. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have another idea for a habit, you always may ping us. We can add it in the next session. So does someone has a question, Dwayne, maybe?
I haven't seen any in the chat. Anybody want to take yourself off of mute and have any questions?
You can send an email to Starlord. He will happily answer all your questions, I think.
Oh, looks like Ryan's typing something here.
Yeah. So let us also first thank you everyone for your attention, and we hope you enjoyed our session. So our socials are also on this slide. So yeah, if you have another question later on, just talk to us through Twitter or through LinkedIn. We're always happy to answer anything or to help.
Yes. And and reach out. I'm gonna share my screen again.
Yeah, let me just take control doing.
So a couple of things here to take into account for everybody, especially if you're kind of new to kind of the Azure community and what a lot of us do and contribute is there's a really cool event going on that a couple of friends of ours put on, the festive calendar, and this is like they're putting together. There's about 3 videos every day that they're putting together in it's in a like an advent calendar type setting where it's just it's videos. I think Karel, you're contributing as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
So all 3 of us have contributions on the festive calendar, as well as multiple Microsoft employees, Microsoft MVPs, MCTs from around the world. So bookmark that site. It just started yesterday, so you're not too far behind. But bookmark it. Follow the hashtag for festive tech calendar, and you'll find out every day that there's something new. For those of you that are in the U.S., I think they're going live 10 UK time, so it's like 6 a.m. 6 a.m. our time. So by the time you get up, you can watch some new videos. And then like I said, the MC2MC site that Wim is a part of, and then I've got Tech9 on there for you, Karel. I grabbed that while you guys were presenting. So tech9.be, real easy URLs to remember there. My Captain Hyperscaler YouTube channel, I do some YouTube series there as well, and then the Skill Me Up YouTube channel. There's some good expert talks that my company puts on. Wim's been a part of a couple. I'll have to find a couple to invite you to at a later date too, Karel, as well. We're going to constantly be do those, and those are fun because I'll generally schedule those with some of my friends in the community to present with and do different exam crams if you're doing a certification course or just technology updates, very similar to what we do here in the user group. We do like just hour-long sessions that we do live and then record and put up on YouTube. So feel free to go to YouTube and just find the Skill Me Up channel, and you can find all the past episodes that we've been doing there. We generally put them in different episodes of certification talks, cloud native talks, cloud theory talks, as well as cloud what we call Cloud Maker, which I think the 7 habits would kind of fit in there a little bit in terms of just getting yourself into the cloud. So I thank everybody for attending, and I hope to see everybody again at a later date as well. And thanks again to Wim and Karel for a great session, entertaining as always with the movie themes, and love the animations. I especially the Back to the Future. I love the DeLorean going across.
You saw it.
I caught it. Yeah, got a DeLorean going across.
It was a lot of work, that one. It was a lot of work.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate it, and thanks everybody. Like I said, feel free. Hope to see you in a couple of weeks when we do the container talks with Peter.
It's Peter, I think. Yeah? He's also a member of the MC2MC.
Yep, he's MC2MC. Yep. So yep. Thanks everybody. Appreciate the time, and Wim and Karel, enjoy your evening since it's evening there for you guys, and you're at the end of your day. I gotta finish my day up now.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.